Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be building up a quaint little farm in Valheim. As always, if you just want to see the tour, I do have timestamps in the description so you can skip ahead and go straight to the good bits. But if you're here to see the actual building process, then we're going to be jumping on into it. Now, the inspiration is a little loose on this one. This is kind of the farm I build up in most games that have building. It's an older looking barn, but I don't know if there's a specific era that it would come from specifically. That said, I've seen it in kind of like the late medieval era. I've seen it in modern. It's still a style of barn that's being built, but the reason for it is that we needed somewhere in the early game where we could start stashing pigs, raise them up, slaughter them, what have you, but also have a spot later on to raise chickens. As far as this goes in our servers, usually that's the only animals we really kind of tame is just the boars and the chicken. We don't really spend a lot of time trying to get everything else like the wolves, the locks, and all of the rest. I think we could benefit a lot from doing the wolves because we usually do a lot of hunting trips to go farm wolves for meat. It is one of the easier recipes that has a pretty decent buff to just kind of have for a day-to-day. At any rate, that's what this build is just a simple little farm to house some boars and some chickens. Now, I am going to be doing another build later on that's going to be more of the plants instead of husbandry. I needed a spot obviously for the windmills. I need a spot to raise up my crops. It'll get done whenever the server comes out. So all of this, all these builds I've been doing recently are all gearing towards the 1.0 release coming out next year when we start a fresh server, the group of friends I play with, and we're going to go in and build a whole new base on a whole new world and experience the game from start to finish. Because they have announced in the full game release, all of the older areas are going to have a little something new in them. I mean, it could be something really small like, oh, you know, there's a new little item, or maybe there's a couple of new little instances of like little buildings spawning. I'm not expecting like, oh yeah, there's gonna be a new boss everywhere. I'm not expecting anything major, but it'd be nice to just kind of experience the game all the way through again at any rate. Now, as you can see, as I've been talking, this build obviously took a lot of terraforming. Since this is a farm, it's obviously not going to be in town. The idea for this is it would actually be sitting just outside the town walls. So probably have, and I don't know if I want to do this, but my real thought on this was that there would be a little stable next to the entrance for all of those horses in this game. I know you can ride like locks, and I think you can ride the new the lizard things from Ashlands. I'm blanking on what their names are called. So I guess there are technically mounts in the game. But that said, getting them back to your starter base is usually a huge pain in the ass. So in that, I don't know why I would really build a stable. So instead, I might be building this farm. And as such, obviously it's not going to be on the cobblestone terrain paint. It's going to be out in the dirt and the grass. So that's why I built it over here. I know it's a really long explanation to get to. I built this over here because I wanted to. Now, as you can see here, we're kind of plotting out where our actual pins are going to be. Obviously, we have one side dedicated to one animal, another side dedicated to the other animal. In all honesty, it could be the same animal. It doesn't really matter for all intents and purposes. But as far as this building goes, it is going to have a very large middle section, roughly 2 stories tall, that has a lower roof on either side. That's technically where the pins are for the animals. And it goes all the way back, and in the very back has a little loft area where you would store your supplies. You don't want to get wet and whatnot. So you probably have some hay up there. You'd have some feed up there, which is kind of what we do in this build, as you'll see further on into it. And right now, I'm still trying to figure out how big this place is even going to be. The small tidbit on that is I knew that this mountain behind this building was more than likely going to be an issue because of how tall it was. There's a max height you can raise ground to and a max depth you can lower ground down to, which is dependent on its starting point. And as tall as that mountain was, I had a pretty good feeling that I was literally going to get to a spot where I wouldn't be able to lower it anymore. And it actually turned out perfectly to where I built the inner corner right where that started. So it worked out pretty well. But I am trying to map out right now how big this place is going to be, how big the doors are going to be. Just like in the last game I built this in, which was Enshrouded, I was trying to build a smaller door that animals could go through, but people may not necessarily be able to. And just like in Enshrouded, I ran into the exact same issue to where a small animal can't get through an opening that it should be able to get in through. So the way I fix that is honestly, it's just those arches. The little stone arches I put underneath. As soon as I got rid of those, the boars were able to go underneath it. And I finally found a reason for the little door that I never use for anything. I was like, oh, this is perfect for just a little animal door. And then I killed it. I mean, he served his purpose. We got the testing in. We found out he could get through it and he was no longer necessary. What? But with that, important test out of the way, I started building out the actual walls. I do come back in later and shorten all this down. I wanted the walls to be roughly 2 to 3 bricks tall on the sides and then have the steepest roof option. But I also didn't want the roof on the sides to connect with the roof on the top. So all this kind of mandated how wide this building could really be. So I kept, building up a little bit, putting in the roof with the walls, realizing it was way too high, lowering it, putting it back, building up the slant again, realizing it would still connect to the upper roof, breaking it down again, shortening it so it was in more, and finally found that sweet spot that was basically 1 wide brick, the door, and 1 more wide brick. So roughly, 2, 4, 6 squares. And again, the reason for that is I was trying to make sure that the roof didn't touch the top and that there'd be roughly a full wooden panel of a gap, because I was also kind of toying with the idea of having windows up there. In case you don't know about this, those new pillars from Ashlands are the best utensil ever to build with. And I don't even mean using them in builds. I mean using them to make builds. To find the center of a block prior to having that piece was the biggest annoyance in the world. With that piece though, it is so easy to just line up, oh, I have this little square where center, you place that pillar down and you can place a block right in the middle. It is insanely good. And I mostly use this when I'm going from stone to wood now, so that the wood is perfectly centered on the stone. That way there's a little lip on the outside, a little lip on the inside. It's a good happy medium, because usually if I'm building with stone, I want there to be a noticeable lip from the wall on the outside. Obviously, if you put it flush to the outer wall, you can see on the outside and the inside. I don't know. It looks weird to me. It makes the outside look too flat. I don't mind a room looking flat, but if the outside wall looks flat, I start having an issue with it. A lot of my early builds are kind of like that, where I would build just like really flat wall up and then be like, oh, well, now there's a lip, and then just have like this really basic lip. I feel like I'm starting to get better and finding ways to kind of change the depth of that facing wall to the public. Facades, anything, you name it. I think I've come a long way. You should see some of my earlier builds. They were kind of rough. Now, once all this is said and done, I actually think I break it down one more time, because I wasn't thinking about it. When I centered the wooden wall on the stone, I actually only centered it in one direction. So it's centered front to back, but it's not centered from left to right. So I actually have to go back in one more time and rebuild the walls. I leave the center, which is the section I'm building on right now. I leave that, but that was really only because it wasn't horribly noticeable for the most part. I also was really thinking about putting in gates there, but I hate the little doors, and there's not really a gate. Now, we do have shutters now, and it might be that I put 2 shutters in. I need to test to make sure that the shutters will stop animals. I don't know why they wouldn't, but I also don't know for a fact. So it needs to be tested. But I might put in 2 shutters to act like a gate in between those 2 pillars, because the little half door, I don't really understand the point of the half door. I mean, I kind of get it when you start talking about animals. Like, oh, I have a little chicken coop, I put the little half door in it. Oh, I have a little pig pen, I put the little half door in it. In the regards of making barns and pens, I understand the half door. And maybe that's all it was for. Maybe that was the intended purpose. They wanted something for husbandry, and they're like, nah, we'll put in this little half door, people will use it. And to be fair, I did use it for this build. I probably have only ever used it for this build specifically, but what have you. And because I didn't go back and replace these walls so they're properly centered, I am having to kind of finagle a cover up where the stone ends and the wood keeps going, but it wasn't horribly complicated at any rate. And again, those new pillars really help with that. I do feel like I probably mention that way too often. I'll be like in the middle of a build, like, this right here, do this, it's amazing. And I probably have beaten that horse to death, but it's one of those small little tricks that you find out and you're just like, and granted this came from Ashland, so it's not like it's been in the game forever, but it's one of those things where you're just like, if I had known about this, or if this had been available sooner, my life would have been so much better and I have lost so much heartache. So I try try getting the word out about it as much as possible just to make sure people know about it. And there are a lot of odd snap points that I end up having in this game due to the way that I usually end up manually placing things. Even when I go in and like snap things in a weird way to get it to line up where I want to, even though it's hitting a snap point, it still ends up causing some weird issue down the road. And I've just kind of started referring to my builds as just being cursed. Just being cursed, because at some point I know that I am literally fucking myself by doing all these manually placement things, by putting on a second roof to kind of cover up the beams. This was definitely one of those builds where since, and I don't even know why, but it was actually in this build and in my next build, since I had the wooden walls centered on a stone block, you would think that since it's centered on both sides, if you just moved it off a center the same direction, it would be the same width anyway. But in the way that I did it, or ended up doing it, it turned out that my roof didn't actually align properly. And what I mean by this is the top of the roof, where it came up to a point, was such a small gap that the natural point piece didn't fit in it. It would go over. So I had to find the way to manually place the little toppers on my roofs, which was a huge pain. Just an absolutely huge pain. And I probably still didn't even line, because again, I had to eyeball it. I had to eyeball like, okay, is this clipping? Is this not clipping? Is it clipping enough where it doesn't matter? Is it very noticeable? There's like a ledge or what have you. Again, it's on the roof, so most people aren't going to notice it anyway, unless you point out like, and then I fucked up right there. And then they're like, oh yeah, well now I see it, thanks. But most people probably wouldn't see the issue that I'm talking about. I think it's more noticeable on the other build that I'll be releasing next week. But yeah, cursed builds. So much fun. I know there's mods out there that help with snap points and being able to place items any way you want, not just, rotating them, counterclockwise or clockwise, but also being able to rotate them fully, like a full orbit. So if you can, instead of having the stone pillars only going straight up, you can have them at an angle and stuff like that, which is really nice. I do all my builds without any mods. I do these with 0 add-ons. It is just the base game so that anybody can come in, they can go, oh, I like the way this looks, I want to build it. They can watch this video, kind of get a rough idea of how to do it. I take screenshots and pictures to kind of facilitate, okay, here's some detail shots. The rough idea is so that anybody can come in and kind of build what I'm building without having to do a bunch of homework or without having to go and download a bunch of other things. It's just, this is the game, this is how it works, this is what I built. You can do it too. I will say this, my love for those Mistland glowing orb torches that require no fuel, I probably overuse. I use them a lot. Again, it's an easy building piece that doesn't require really any resources that are hard to get. It takes like a couple pieces of wood and then a wisp. So it's like really nice having those over. Granted, they don't shed much light, but they do shed enough light to you're not completely blind at night, and they make good markers. They make really good markers. You can see those things from so far away. But yeah, because I did place the really fucking weird roofs, I am having to go in and kind of trick the snap points essentially so that stuff lines up the way I want it. This roof is not only doubled up layer wise, but also doubled up as far as overlapping. There's a lot of excessive roofing going on in this build. I apologize for that. It is the cheapest roof though. Usually my builds are the slate roofs that require tar, but since I was building a barn, I was like, it makes sense that this is straw. And honestly, as much roof is actually there, not just, visually, but double layered, and it is overlapping, there's a lot of roof. I will say though, thankfully, in this build, I did not need any support beams. So I didn't need any of the iron support beams to go up and allow you to place the roof a little bit higher. I always feel bad when I have to add those in because it's like, iron is that one resource that I think everybody hates having to grind because of where it's at. But also it is the most used material in the game, I feel like, for a lot of building things. So if I can cut out as much of that iron as possible, I try to, because I know I'm going to be using a lot of it already. Yeah, and here's where we're going in and actually replacing that roof. Because like I was saying, I centered it in one direction, but not both directions. So at some point I had to come in here and make sure that I actually had it properly centered as it should be. And again, what I should have done here is instead of finding a way to like trick the system into like, it's not even really tricking the system, instead of mapping it out awkwardly to figure out where I need to put the other wall, which I ended up giving up on and just recentering it with the thing. I should have just redone the inside wall on that taller section instead of just living with it. And here you can see that little corner back there that I just passed. That dirt back there actually won't go down any further. That's what I was talking about. I actually hit the minimum dig depth in that spot, so that actually doesn't go down any further. Luckily, it's exactly far back enough to where I could build this build where I was wanting to build it. I didn't build this any shorter because of that. It literally just happened to line up where I was like, this is where I want it to be, thankfully. Because again, it's a small barn, right? It doesn't need to be a massive building. It's not, you know, a fucking meat hall, a Jarl's house. It's a barn for pigs. Well, pigs and poultry, but still, it doesn't need to be suave. It just needs to be large enough to house the animals comfortably. I know they don't really care about comfort level in this. There's not like a, oh, you have to have, you know, so much open land for like X number of animals or they stop being happy or something, which they do with the bees. Do that with the bees. They don't do that with anything else to my knowledge. So it's superficial, but most of my builds are anyway, right? You don't have to have support beams. You don't have to have ribbing on roofs. It just looks better. It looks polished and it looks natural. And obviously in the real world, there's definitely smaller living spaces for animals, unfortunately, but we're going to be humane about this, right? And I do come in and kind of put in the planting dirt, and really I wanted that to just be mud more or less, and I went over the top of it and put down the hay, which considering the materials is kind of expensive due to how much you need I think it's flax. It's one of the two plains plants, but you need so much of the plains plants for cooking and like crafting armor and equipment during that phase that it feels kind of bad using it to line out a pig pen. But I think it really was necessary. Like I said, I wanted the darker dirt in there, but I also wanted the hay down on the ground because on the inside, I feel like that's how a barn would be. You would kind of rotate this out every so often, but you put some hay down just, you know, for the animals. Whether or not they're eating it or just using it as bedding, it's there for them. So at this point, I'm going in and finishing up the walls and the roofs. And also, once again, I am kind of cursing myself with, why did I have to build it this way? But here we are. Luckily, it wasn't too bad. I found a way to kind of cheat in the beams easily, but yeah. Why do I keep doing this to myself? And I have been cutting out a bit of this. I'm trying to get these videos down as well. So obviously I started doing my streams without a night cycle. I just kind of time of day, noon, do through that. So there's not just this awkward point people can't really see anymore. So if you see like odd little jumps like that, obviously I am trying to cut down the video as much as possible. I'm trying to keep it between 10 and 20 minutes at this point. 30 max. I'm trying to get like 30 max, comfortably around 20 is what I'm really aiming for. I think that's a good spot. It's not too long, not too overbearing, cutting out the fluff. And here's where I was talking about the possibility of having windows up here. I don't know. I could really go either way on it. The reason I didn't have it came more down to a logic thing. I did find a way to center them because right here I'm trying to figure out basically how many to have and how to center them so that it looks, you know, proper all the way across. The real issue I had with it though is kind of a silly one. My thought process was this is a barn. It needs to stay warm during the winter months because that's what you do. You bring the animals inside. They have somewhere to stay to be out of the environments. And in that, why would I have windows to let the heat out? Granted, I have two giant windows on either end of the barn, kind of already defeating that purpose. But that was my logic. I was like, I don't need windows here. This is going to let the heat out. Like it really mattered at that point. Not that it matters anyway in Valheim, but that is why I ended up not going with them. The oddity about this build is every time I see the front section and purely the front section, I'm like, oh, it's a schoolhouse. Every time, or a church, you know, a small chapel, a schoolhouse or something. I feel like in that little facade front section, it needs to have a bell. And here I'm going in, putting in the first layer roof on the upper section. Again, this is a cursed build, so the roof didn't line up at all to begin with and took a lot of manual placement. You would think it wouldn't be that bad with the fact it comes out to a natural point on the walls. But as you probably just saw, I had to not manually, but I had to like fake a system to put in an extension on the beam so it actually goes down to to the stone, which means that this doesn't really line up anymore, as you can see. And it's not even off by an amount that I feel like makes sense. You would think if I did that on both sides, it would have converted from being, you know, needing the steeple top to just being two pieces up against each other. Nope. It's not even enough gap to fall in. I can stand in that section and I wouldn't even fall through it. Just enough of a hole to be a hole. But I did finally manage to manually line up a roof, and then to get around it on the actual top section, I put a double beam in, which blocks the rain. It doesn't rain through. I did manage to test that properly, and hey, it keeps the water out. It looks fine. It's closed. That's all I can really ask for sometimes. Now, I did manually place the beams under the edges of the roof because it wasn't so much that I didn't want them to snap. It was more the fact I really wanted a thick framing on the roof. And when it snaps, it obviously half of it is above it. And that was more of what I was trying to avoid. I wanted it to be like roof and then like a thick piece of wood underneath to really look like a support beam instead of being integrated into it. So I did manually place all of the wood edging on the roof system. And the only reason it looks like this here is because I haven't yet put in the facade roof. And again, I've started doing this really to just cover up the beams right here that I just covered, which is whenever you build up the wall, if you want a slanted wall, there's no beam free slanted wall. It's if you want the diagonal wall piece, it comes with a beam on it, and that beam cuts through the roof. And that's why I really try avoiding. Sometimes I want it. Sometimes I want there to be a visual structure on the outside of the roof too, to kind of make it look more like an exterior ribbing. More often than not, I don't want to see that. So that's why I started adding this like facade roof to almost every build. And the other reason for that is, I know you're probably thinking, oh, then why even build the first roof? Why not just have the second one? There has been times where doing just the facade roof doesn't actually stop rain. I haven't tested it. I have had it happen, so I know that there is at least a reason for it. My assumption is that anytime you have a roof that's not connected to walls, it doesn't actually register it as a roof, is my only thought so far. Whether or not that's 100% accurate on what's going on, I don't know. And at this point, we're putting in our little loft area. I end up putting, some storage up there and a bed, a very simple bed. You can't sleep in it because, again, with boars, you can't have fire nearby. And this spot was actually close enough that the boars were freaking out from it. So again, it was more for an aesthetic. There's a little candle, there's a bed, I just wanted to make it look like maybe a farmhand or something might sleep here to like keep an eye on the animals at night or something. But no one's probably really gonna sleep here anyway. And right now we're realizing even more how cursed this build was, because I wanted to have a ribbing system in here to support the roof, and of course it was going to be a problem. Why wouldn't it be a problem? So I do kind of fiddle with this for quite a while, trying to find out just how I can get this to kind of snap and click where I want to. I think in the end I had to kind of do it, if you can't beat them, join them, and put in the ribbing in a non-symmetrical way. It is slightly overall, I think there's 3 ribbings on your side, and I think they're closer to the front door than they are the back. They're evenly spaced to each other, if I remember correctly, but they're not evenly spaced between the 2 stone pillars, which was one of those, I did what I had to. And in fact, all the ribbing I put in was actually manually placed as well. They weren't really snapped into anything. So in that, the wooden beams are kind of only being supported by the wooden beams, more or less. Now, the funny thing here is the beams going straight up are actually so tall they go through the roof. But because the facade roof is so much higher than the original one, it didn't really matter. And I strongly considered not having this beam here, but I decided to keep it there just because it was in the pattern, like, oh, that's just logically where the next one would be. On the front, there's a wall there, so technically there's already a support between the 2 pillars. Which is the only reason why I kept it. I don't like it because it is extremely low. I did like how I could put a lantern in it though, so it looked like there was just a hang lantern off the beam. I do end up removing it though. I don't even know if I put a light back. I think I just left a candle up here. I think I removed that lantern and just put a candle up here. I don't know. I probably would put the lantern back, reconsidering it, but why not have an open candle with a shit ton of dried hay next to it? Sounds perfectly safe to me. I don't know what you're talking about. But at this point, we are kind of just focusing on decorating. We have the building completely built up at this point. And like I said, I wanted this top section to be storage, so I piled up a bunch of hay to make a little hay stack for the best I could anyway. And like I said, put a little bed up there, put a little candle up there, put some storage. Down below, I wanted a little work area, so I stuck a little stack of wood down here in a little framing system, so it kind of looks like the wood is being held, you know, in place. Never actually tried building one of these in the game before, so it was me just trying to figure out how to do it. At the end of the day, I don't even think I need those beams going along the ground because I didn't even really use them. These stacks of wood are actually shorter than the beams are, so there's no good way to do that normally. But yeah, just wanted a little like wood cutting area / workbench with just a little bit of storage down here. Really just to kind of fill out the area more than anything. So at this point, the only thing we have left to do is build up the chicken coops. The chicken coop I ended up building here, I don't actually keep. I tried building up a chicken coop and it just, the way it looked bothered me so much that I went back later and destroyed it and rebuilt it. Now I didn't destroy everything, so the sizing of it is the same. So I didn't destroy the floor, I didn't destroy the legs, I didn't destroy the stairs, but I did completely destroy the roof. The roof is what bothered me. So I actually do come back in here and completely destroy the roof on this and just make it a normal A-frame roof instead of trying to do a, you know, little slanted roof. I really wanted this to work. In my mind, this is roughly what chicken coops look like. Is like one slant roof, and then on the inside you have like a shelf on that one side that's taller, and that's where like the raised little beds for the chickens and where they sleep. But I couldn't get the look right, and I absolutely hated what I ended up with, so I just nixed. Yeah, what can I say? But all this really is a little 2x2, and by 2x2 I'm talking about the wooden flooring, 2 back, 2 across, little building that is really just big enough to house a brazier without burning the whole thing down. And the reason for this is I needed somewhere far enough away from the pigs that I could put a brazier that would hatch chicken eggs. Because to hatch chicken eggs, you have to have them next to a fire. And this little section over here was far enough away that I could get away with it to where I had a brazier over here and the pigs were not affected at all. But yeah, so I kind of just go in, put some hay down on the ground and a little brazier. I don't know why I used the big brazier in this. I realized that it's like needlessly large later on and remove it and put in the normal smaller brazier. But with this, the build is basically done. So I'm going to go ahead at this point and move over into the tour. And we'll kind of talk and look at everything one last time. So here is our farm. On the left, we have our pigs, and on the right, we have our chickens and our little chicken coop. And inside we have a section where they can come in, eat, be out of the environment, such as, you know, rain, cold, what have you. Down below we have a little workbench and some storage down below. And then as well, we have some storage up top here. We have a bed. Again, this is, you know, a pig farm, so you can't really have an open flame this close to them. So there is not a flame close enough to actually use this bed. But there is storage up there. And at any rate, that is the build. I hope you enjoyed. I like the way it came out. It is small and simple as it should be. I will be having another one come up next week. It is going to be the workshop. It is going to be probably pretty close to the final build for the server builds I'm doing. I still might remake the portal hub, and I am definitely going to be remaking the meat hall. But let me know what you liked about this build. Let me know what you didn't think worked. I'd love to hear your opinions. And if you have any suggestions on something I should build, let me know. I'm starting to rack up a good little list of things I'm going to be doing in upcoming builds once I'm done with all the server builds. So again, hope you enjoyed. Please follow, and I'll catch you next time. Have a good one.